Well, I want to do a quick introduction because it's been a while. I don't know if you guys have taken a course from Karuna, but it is a treat. Um, what most of you may not know is that he has created a Western studies curriculums for the monks at Cayton. Um, he is a long time, oh goodness, it's going to be loud. A long time student of Lama Yeshe um, and Lama Zopa. And he is currently on the board of directors for the FPMT. So this is a true treat. He's an author of The Misleading Mind that he published in 2012. So thank you, Karuna. We're
Thank
so
you.
grateful to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a nice introduction. Um, nice to meet all of you. I don't know if there's more people will wander in or not. We'll see. Um, let's see. Okay, let me get. Yeah. So thank you for having your cameras on when you can, because that, like I said, it's otherwise it's kind of weird. I like to have the connection with people, of course, and some people it's dinner time for some people, things like that, and I understand if you have to have your camera off. Um, so that I don't need to give any more introduction than Jayla already gave me. But one thing that people who do know me will know from the classes I teach, I do like to have interaction with people. Sometimes there's depending on the nature of the class, there's kind of a sort of a content demand to deliver. And then the other classes are lighter on content, maybe more interactive, things like that. So the class that we're doing today is I want it needs to be somewhat interactive because there's sort of an assumption that you have some kind of practice or have some introduction to Buddhist thought. And I don't, it's hard to, when you ask how many people have studied Buddhism, it can be a little bit embarrassing because the people haven't, and they, you know what I mean? How many of you have not? No, it's like that's not the good way to do it. So I hope that this can be relevant to it doesn't matter if you practice Buddhism or not. I mean, we're all trying to become better people. And so I'll share with you some ideas around some things I've brought out from the misleading mind. Mostly, I've been doing I have been doing this a long time, and so I have too many presentations. It's like, which one does this fit in? But at the same time, I don't like coming in with a cookie cutter approach, right? I mean, I like for it to be organic, and I like it to be fitting for the audience. So I will have some slides, but it's not rigid the way I go. And what I'd like to know is there anything you'd like to tell me about, like why you came here? You don't have to talk, but if you have an idea, like sort of a context for me as to why today, why this evening, what brought you to this class? You can unmute yourself. Yeah. Sheil?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
I think I think it's really important to not isolate your practice, but actually how to integrate it in every day because like myself, I'm not a monastic. And so my world is wherever I go.
Mm.
And my practice needs to incorporate the people I interact with.
Mm.
And I feel like me practicing to be a better human being can only be used in practice when I am in my world, which is, where I am, as
Right.
opposed to if you are living a monastic, you have all these vows and it's a really different life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And and so I think myself, I'm learning quite a bit, but I also need to learn how to put that in practice, which is really important.
Yeah, thank you. As some people who know me here will know that, so I will talk somewhat, bring in Lama Yeshe's, personality into this class as well, because that's the context for me. He was my main teacher along with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. But why I mentioned Lama Yeshe is that unfortunately people didn't meet him, in that he presented the Buddhist approach in exactly the way you were talking about, Sheil. That he and Lama Zopa both spoke from experience, which is kind of very something that we all try. Well, I try to emulate, even though I don't have any experience. But I have the experiences that you have in the world, and I get angry and frustrated, and those kinds of things. So I do draw on his inspiration I try to, and sort of bring him into the room, so to speak. So I will talk to you about it. In fact, you mentioned about the monastics, and he was so unique. There's sort of a vow. I don't know if it's a vow, but there's sort of a precept amongst monastics that if they can encourage someone to become a monk or nun, that's kind of what they're supposed to do, because it's seen as a quite an exalted, lifestyle as a spiritual person. But in my case, he actually he told me not to become a monk. I wanted to become a monk. Told me not to become. In fact, everything I wanted to do, he told me not to do. So, uh, that's kind of how it can work. So we can talk more about that. And then Choson, did you have something you can add?
I wanted the class that you were going to teach on mind.
I'll do that too.
So looking forward.
Don't worry, I can't not do that. Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd stop in and participate for this one too, because what do we need more than practice in our daily life?
Okay, well, let's see if I can hook you with I can weave the mind part into it, so you'll get something benefit out of it, and you won't want to leave. So
thank you.
I was just asking, as people were just coming on, I was asking if anyone wanted to let me know, give a context or an idea why they showed up today. And I also was saying, for those who've come on recently, as many people who can do be on screen would be great for me, because I like to connect with people, and it's a little harder once it's a name. But at the same time, if you'd like to keep your camera off, I understand that too. So, anyone else want to add something? So I know to do the right thing. Doesn't mean I will do the right thing. Denise?
Hello, Karuna.
Hi.
Very nice to see you. I got led into this path with your bridle in my mouth, I might say. And a lot with the way that you explained emptiness.
Hmm.
And so we did a little bit this weekend with Geshe Tashi.
Oh yeah.
And I love it if you just bring some more emptiness in here for us. I know you've encouraged me to meditate on emptiness, and a lot of times I'm still wondering, what does that mean and how and practically?
Yeah, that's good.
So I would like to.
Yeah, good. Yeah, otherwise too much preconceptions, particularly around emptiness, is not so useful, because then we can't start, we stop learning, and you get me on tangents, so you got to stop me sometimes, okay? But as most of you probably know, in Tibetan Buddhist, or in Buddhist explanation of the nature of reality, or emptiness of inherent existence, whatever you like to call it, Denise, you said you just want to learn more about it and find. But there's 4 philosophical schools, right, that explain emptiness differently, and it's hierarchical, not in an ego way, but in terms of the level of understanding that a student will go through. So until one has full non-conceptual insight into reality, you are going to be studying. One is going to be studying those different philosophical definitions or explanations, because when you have an experience of emptiness, then what happens is you're initially, as you begin to unravel and begin to see through the nature of ignorance, through the power and the weapon or the tool of emptiness of inherent existence, then you don't see emptiness in its deepest, most profound form. You start having you have some flashes, and you get insights, and then you develop that and you cultivate that, and then those insights become deeper. You have to stick with it, because you can get stuck and think you've now understand the nature of reality, and one hasn't. You understand a level of it, but not the deepest level that will take one to enlightenment, which is what enlightenment is that understanding of the deepest nature of reality. Anybody else? Yes. Okay. Just unmute, and then we'll get going in a few minutes. Yeah, Sheila?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what was it, Chosan? No, was it Jessica that was just speaking?
I think it was
Or
Denise.
just to piggyback on that, yeah, totally. Like I totally would like to understand how to put like um anicca, dukkha, and anatta all together, because there's so much talk about that. And then like how do I apply that in my everyday?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that whole idea of emptiness, please. Yes.
Okay.
How do you
So
understand it?
thank you, and you reminded me, because I have a very strong sort of mission, you could say, to make the teachings relevant. So, I mean, there's plenty we can teach philosophically and all these ideas. And like I said, it's because of the influence of Lama Yeshe that he didn't really care what you understood, intellectually, academically. His only concern was, were you able to apply it in your life? Were you able to understand the application of this very profound idea? He often talked about this very profound idea, and be able to go into I'll use his language, be able to go into the supermarket and not go berserk. That's what he would say, you know, and to, and even most of us don't know we go berserk into a supermarket until you start looking at the nature of your mind and just having an idea of what it is we're trying to do, right? What real happiness is. It just comes down to happiness. And the definition of happiness is gonna be different in Buddhist thought, right? Um, I mean, it's more based in reality. Now, I'm going to distract you with some slides. Okay, let's get going. Right? We cannot
Right.
solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. This is really probably the foundation of Buddhist thought and the Buddhist approach. And when we start, if we can bring real life examples into this, and how the mind that created the problem, that mind at one time is the mind that solves the problem, but the same mind, the same attitude, the same perception, the same thought, the same mental image cannot solve the problem. That's because it's based on a fixed imprint. So knowing that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them, we have to also know what created them. And this is not a common conception, I'm just talking about in the normal world, whatever normal world is. We have to think about the problems that arise and how we naturally think what created them. Okay? So this we're going to talk a little more about. So the problems, this is just a title slide, how problems help. So the problems that we're going to talk about now, it's really easy to talk about the problem of climate change, or the problem of a misbehaving child, the problem of someone difficult at work, the problem with my partner, um, he's so selfish and that sort of thing. It's easy. But as we come in the idea in terms of Buddhist thought, which is kind of brutal, is it will include those problems, but it doesn't look to those as the underlying problem and the cause. So it's very concerned about causes. And it's quite interesting. If you think about modern psychology, right? Modern psychology. So when you go to deal with in terms of problems of being confused or unsure, or insecure, or these kinds of things. If you're dealing with the therapist, or in modern psychology, in the theory, what are the cause? They will talk about causes, won't they? And what do they articulate as causes? What are some of the things? You can unmute.
Modern psychology says our childhood.
Our childhood, right? What else? Okay. Are there depending on the psychological school or theory, might say something different, right?
Mhm.
Our parents.
Our parents. Let's blame our parents for the reason I'm insecure is because of my parents. I wasn't securely attached. You know, it doesn't mean none of these things exist, by the way. They do exist. But what I believe is the challenge for us is to relate to these theories and these ideas as mere descriptions. But what happens is they are presented as truths. Okay. And if we were to be religious for a second, or maybe fundamentalists, and go into the fundamentalist idea of Buddhist thought, then problems, the cause of problems is something different, isn't it? So, and we have to be careful too, because the other side of that it was what Lama Zopa Sheikh saying about when people say things like, well, it's your karma, just accept it. He used to call that Dharma politics. I don't know quite what he meant by Dharma, but the point is Lama Yeshe also used to kind of rail against those kinds of descriptions, because that's just like saying, when you say it's your karma, it might be true, but it's a little bit like saying, your mother didn't nurture you well when you were young, or you weren't breastfed, or you weren't, it, it's like, it's a blame thing, isn't it? So, of course, it's your karma. And of course, the conditions of the way our parents treated us, those are conditions. Okay. As you know, probably in Buddhist thought, so this is what gets really where the rubber meets the road, and people don't like it, who don't, is that in Buddhist psychology, we're talking about a difference between causes and conditions. Is everyone familiar with that? If you're not, then just speak up. The difference is is the causes and conditions. So even in the sense of our genes, what we inherit. I mean, this is coming, it does present itself as a very solid cause of our problems, doesn't it? Uh, is our genetic makeup, or yeah. So that's becoming sort of the foundation. But from Buddhist psychology and philosophy and the nature of reality, we're not to say Buddhist, but we just say, what's the real cause? In reality, what is the real cause? And in our modern culture, we don't have that answer anymore. I think maybe long ago that maybe we had the answer. So in reality, we say that causes and conditions are different. Okay. And we'll talk about causes as we go forward. So first of all, when we talk about how problems help, because when this class, I hope we're going to be talking about problems that people face, challenges. I don't care what you call it, challenges or problems. Fundamentally, they have the same effect on us. So, let's just talk for a second. I'm going to go off. I hope I'm going to get this screen, be able to go to sharing the right presentation. We're going to stop sharing. Just for a second, what is the definition of a problem?
Mhm. Something that causes suffering.
Okay. Something causes suffering.
Could be an obstacle that blocks our forward progress.
Okay. Okay.
Something or an event that makes us have to really work, figure things out.
Yeah. What else? Anything else?
Everyday life.
Well, I mean, when you're having dinner with your family and having, nice conversations or whatever, or when you're riding in a car and I mean, is that a problem? No. I mean, we don't, in common language, we don't say that's a problem, right? Now, if we get to my classic example, I'm really apologizing because I will disclose to you how bad of a person I am. But when you have the slow driver in the fast lane, is that a problem?
It shouldn't be, but it is.
Right. Okay. How many people have, for how many people here, you can just raise your hand, slow driver in the fast lane is a problem? Not everybody. So you see, this is what's interesting. Okay, this is proof. This is a simple example. We would say, yeah, the problem is the traffic, right? The problem is the traffic because the roads are too narrow. And we all go, yes, yes, that's the problem. I mean, of course, on a fundamental, just very conventional level, yes, I get you. But we're not here for just the conventional because we're here to figure things out. And if the traffic were the problem, then everyone sitting in that traffic would be having a problem, wouldn't they? But not everyone sitting in that traffic is having a problem. Okay? So what happens to our definition of problem? Yeah.
It becomes personal.
It becomes personal.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Something the mind.
Sorry? Sheila?
Yeah,
That our mind.
Oh.
go ahead, Sheila. Go ahead. That's what I was thinking, that when you said the analogy of like sometimes like the driver, it's a problem for some and it's not for others. And I think sometimes problems just kind of your own internal conflict, because there's like so many times there'll be a situation where it's a problem for me and then people around me, it's not a problem for them.
So the solution is based upon how you see a problem, isn't it? So if the solution is seen external to us and how much traffic there is, the solution is reduced traffic, right? Right? Depending on what you see as the problem is going to determine how you look for a solution. I'm not talking about that we shouldn't improve the roads. I'm trying to make a point, more of a point of how our mind is fixated and habituated to seeing problems in a particular way. Okay? That's kind of what we're talking about, or I'm talking about. Let's see if this screen share is going to work now or not. Okay. Keep your fingers crossed. Is it there?
Yes.
Great. So do we have a shared definition of a problem? Do we have a shared definition?
No.
I don't think so. But we should have if we're going to start talking about how we can overcome problems.
But Karuna, I have a
Yeah.
question. Something like climate change, wouldn't that be a problem for everybody?
No.
So no, because there are people living all over this planet who, believe it or not, have no awareness. Well, not just having awareness doesn't make it not a problem, but who have no awareness of climate change and whose lives haven't changed significantly because of it.
But if the whole climate on the earth changes, eventually they will.
Right. So what would make that a problem?
It reduces our ability to survive.
Right. So if we, I'm getting a real extreme here, so forgive me, okay? Because obviously, yes, I am 100% in favor of working on reducing the impact on the climate or on the planet through climate change. I get that. So I'm not advocating against it. But the problem is what created climate change? Maybe it's a better way to look at it. What created climate change?
Well, a lot of things possibly, it could be partly natural, but it's also created by industrialized society, the stuff we put in the air.
Right. So the factories didn't build themselves, did they? I'm just to be simple, okay? The factories didn't build themselves, did they?
No,
Who built the factories?
humans,
Who produced the cars?
same thing.
And who drives the cars?
Us.
Okay. So is the problem the climate?
No, the problem is people.
Right. Right. It's not even people. I'd rephrase it. It's people. The problem is people. The problem is people's, the nature of our minds and the way we create reality, the way we see so it's really kind of interesting. If you go back to our simple analogy before, it's really simple. Well, I didn't go to it before, but I implied it. It depends what a problem is. Well, the opposite of a problem is sort of a non-problem, right? Which is sort of a state of happiness, correct? Right?
Yeah.
When we don't have a problem, we say we're happy or we're satisfied or we're okay. We're content, right? We're in like stasis, right?
Yeah.
So when that state of stasis changes, we then have a problem. Okay? Who created that? Who created all that pollution? People did. What was the motivator that created it? Did it just happen? It didn't just happen. It was created. Okay?
The motivator.
Yeah. What drove all of a sudden this explosion in pollution?
Greed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a desire to be happy, right? And it's the wrong idea of happiness. Okay? I mean, I'm not saying, I'm as guilty as anybody because I have this ignorant mind. So it comes from this idea of ignorance that this makes me happy. That's simple. If I can get from Santa Cruz to San Francisco, faster, right? Then they're going to, and everyone has that idea, then they'll make the roads bigger, right? And make the roads bigger, but then I should be able to go by myself. I don't want to drive with anybody else. And then, then there's more cars produced. So it comes down, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So it comes down to it's an attitude, right? It's an attitude. It's an attitude. It's not the attitude to want to be happy is not wrong. That is 100% correct. Every living being wants that. It's the how, right? So problems, this second part we're not going to do. So is problem merely construction? So you got two people on the jam freeway. One's not having a problem and the other is. Why?
It's in our mind.
You,
One person sings and listens to audio books and enjoys every opportunity to slow down, and the other one goes crazy that they can't stay fast.
okay. And can you see that is constructed, merely constructed? It's a mere construction. But we don't see it as a mere construction. We see it as reality. Everyone knows that bad traffic makes you angry. Everyone gets frustrated in bad traffic, right? That's what we say. And that articulation is not an articulation of the problem being a construction. That articulation is the problem being inherently, truly, really existent.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So, and when we see things as merely constructed, that is very, very similar. That's part of the understanding of the nature of reality and emptiness. It's empty. It's empty of being, it's empty of not being constructed. It's empty of not being constructed. And what we call that, it's empty of existing the way it appears. It's empty of existing permanently. It's empty of existing independently. When you're sitting in the traffic and your buddy is talking to you about the traffic, he's seen, or she is seeing the traffic as something existing independently. Right? And if you two people sit in the car, all of a sudden, have this awakening that this whole idea of the traffic and the problems merely constructed. Now, I'm not going to go into constructed how right now, because then I'll go down this rabbit hole. But that's when we're talking about the four philosophical schools, that's what they're debating about. Well, how they all agree it's constructed. They just don't agree 100% on how it's constructed. And that's where you begin to study, and it's very profound. And you go through layers of understanding. Okay. And by the way, I'm talking about this because this is easy stuff. When I say easy, I mean it's enjoyable to talk about, but I want to really make sure we make it relevant to everyone's everyday life. Okay. So when we talk about helping, how problems help, what is help? Again, it's a word that we all think we know what it means. But again, it's the same as problem. It's merely constructed. And we try to help someone and they say, that's not helpful. Well, if help was really a thing that was not constructed, then it should help, right? It should always help.
Karuna,
Mm-hmm.
what if it's a problem that we did not construct? For instance, what if a meteor hits the planet here where I
Yeah.
live, or let's say where it hits the planet in Los Angeles,
Okay.
and they have a problem, but they didn't construct it.
Yeah. They have a problem. Well, it's good because people always bring up the most extreme examples. That's I can debate my way out of it, but you probably won't like it, you know? Well, we got to know what a problem is for me to answer that. So why is that what makes that a problem? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to get on the same page.
It destroyed houses and buildings and everything and killed people.
Why is that a problem? I'm not saying it's not, but why is it a problem?
Because if it destroyed my house, that's a problem. I don't know where I'm going to live.
Right. And where would the problem for you be? Where's the suffering? I mean, I'm going really extreme here, so forgive me
Yeah.
for this minute. Yeah.
Well,
Just 'cause you brought up the meteor, so I'm going to go extreme also.
well, I'm sorry, what was the question? Where's the problem?
Yeah. So your house got destroyed.
Being
Where
homeless,
does it become
and everything around me is destroyed. I don't know how I'm going to live.
okay? You don't know how you're going to live.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are many people who are homeless, and I'm not going to the homeless issue, by the way, but there are people who are homeless that actually would prefer to be homeless, right? And it's not a big, I don't want to go into the politics of that, but there's some so homelessness itself, we can't say is a problem. Because if it was a problem, it'd be a problem for everybody. The problem is the suffering, right? Okay. The problem is the mental anguish. And I would agree with you, of course. The larger the catastrophe, then the harder it is not to have mental anguish. I mean, we're all just people, right? We're all just people. Now, but I want just to make a point, and I don't want to minimize your point, okay? I don't want to minimize suffering. We got, war in Israel and we got all kinds of suffering all over the world. I just going to be, for the sake of this class, we're sitting here together for 4 classes and we're just kind of trying to go deeper. It doesn't mean we don't try and stop the meteor. It doesn't mean we don't try and stop the war. Okay. It doesn't mean that. It's that we're having a discussion about how we can survive in a suffering world. Okay. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe did not suffer. I was with them. I mean, I wasn't in their head, but everything I saw and the Dalai Lama, they don't suffer no matter what the outside conditions are, even a meteor hitting and destroying their house. Now, the great empathy, compassion for all the people who suffer with their houses destroyed, who don't have that level of perception, right? They have that. But I'm just talking now fundamentally, where does the problem lie? If the problem lied in the destruction of the city, then Lama Zopa Rinpoche would suffer as well. I was, the other day, I was talking with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's attendant. For those who don't know, Rinpoche who passed away in last April. So I was talking to his secretary. he was telling me about this time that Rinpoche wanted to go to Lumbini, the birth where where Buddha was born. He wanted to go. It's a pilgrimage spot, and so he went down to Lumbini, and there's a very high Lama there that Rinpoche wanted to stay with and take some teachings. And they arrived in the evening a little bit too late. And that Lama sent his apologies and said, well, the rest of the evening he's doing his practices, so they'd get together the next morning. And so that night, as Roger, his secretary, and Rinpoche went to bed, and Rinpoche never slept, by the way. But anyway, that's just besides that, because we'd say not sleeping would be a suffering, right? Some people don't sleep very well. I don't know if this is suffering for them or not. So Rinpoche, I don't know if you know, it was summertime, so it was very hot. And that's down in the Terai of Nepal, which is very low, and mosquitoes, it's just that time of year, just gazillions of mosquitoes. So before Roger went to sleep, he put the mosquito net over Rinpoche, then he crawled under his mosquito net. And about 2 a.m, Roger woke up, and Rinpoche had taken this mosquito net off of himself, and also taken his shirt off. And Roger said, Rinpoche, what are you doing? And he looked at Rinpoche's body, and Roger didn't say there were a lot of mosquitoes. Roger said there were hundreds of mosquitoes all over his back and his body. And Rinpoche was meditating. I mean, Rinpoche spoke to him, and he said, and as Roger tried to cover him up, Rinpoche said, no, leave it alone, leave it alone. He says, it's just one drop. They want one drop. They can live their whole life on one drop. I have so many drops. Okay? So, normally if you don't hear that story, we would all agree that mosquitoes are a problem. Okay? Wouldn't we? I mean, also malaria. Rinpoche, you're going to get malaria. He didn't get malaria. Hey, it's dengue fever. You're going to get dengue. I don't know if you ever got dengue fever or malaria. Would never know. So what's the problem? What is a problem? Okay, what is a problem? And there's many stories like that. Now, as Lama Yeshe would say, Lama saying, speaking about mosquito. Now, he said, the one thing I can't stand, I can't handle is the mosquito buzzing in my ear when I'm trying to meditate. So, those are the two sides, but Lama, I don't think he was really but we have to be practical, I don't think, it's just being practical, but we're talking philosophically now, just for the sake of, pushing the envelope here. Okay. I hope that's okay. Is anyone offended by what I've been saying? Is it too problematic? You sure? Would you tell me if it was? Hmm?
Yeah,
Okay.
Karuna,
Yeah.
um, I heard it like I don't know where I heard it, but there's a Rinpoche saying, or I don't know if it's Rabina, I'm not too sure, but like everything is created by our mind. Everything is mind generated.
Yes.
And so like I've been thinking about like the whole idea of like just what we're talking about suffering and how some people do, some people don't. And since, you know, everything, this was stuck into my head that everything is mind and everything is created by the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And my thinking is my reality is always like a coming together of things and then a
Mm-hmm.
falling coming together. Like every action is a coming together and ending. And I suffer because certain endings of things I attach to.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
we'll
certain
get to that.
things I don't. And
Yeah.
certain
So we'll dig down a little deeper into that. And if I don't address it, make sure you call me on it again, okay? On the thing about help, so as I move forward, so I wanted to, this is quite useful, something I was thinking about, well, I think it's useful, is when we talk about help, okay, and we're going to help somebody, right? we're going to help ourselves. When we look to help, we look for them in the moment, for the most part, don't we? Putting the mosquito net is help for the moment, and it's for the future because I want to sleep, make sure I make it to the morning with a good night's sleep, or or help for the future, meaning you go to medical school, and in order to you sacrifice your sort of happiness, so to speak, the difficulty of going to medical school, so you can provide a good income and good living for when you're older. Okay, now. This is really very important, I think, when we start talking about practicing in everyday life, okay? Because in the pure sense of practice, in the pure sense of Buddhist practice, okay, there's no concern for either of those first two, okay? Now, when it says for the future life, it's not like, oh, I want to be born with 36 virgins or something like that, when I die. I mean, that's not really what it means. For the future life just means that you're doing what you do so that you can be helpful in the future. Okay? In other words, for the future life and for liberation and for enlightenment, to engage in those, which is real, even Rinpoche and the traditional teachings say that it is not a practice. It's not spiritual practice. Okay, I want to repeat that. It's going to upset some people. It's not spiritual practice if what you do is for the moment or for the future of this life. It's not spiritual practice. Okay, it is spiritual practice. Now, when we say for the future life, it doesn't. This can be tricky because it could sound like some sort of fate kind of thing, but it doesn't mean like that. It means that you have a longer, more respectful appreciation for what suffering really is. Because when we work on the moment and or just the immediate or the future, you know what happens? It doesn't get rid of your suffering. Now, don't get me wrong. If you haven't got food, you need to get food. If you haven't got income, you need income, unless you're okay without income, right? So it doesn't mean you don't do those things. It all comes down to intention. And oops, it didn't change. Hang on. It all comes down to I lost that slide. Okay, here. It all comes down to intention, okay? So help is one thing, but now the intention of what we do. So when we talk about working with difficulties or bring our practice into this life, right, into our daily life, it comes down to intention. It doesn't come down to changing things necessarily outside of you. That is not the demonstration of whether your spiritual practice is working or not. The demonstration of your spiritual practice working or not is your state of mind as you go in and out of problems. Okay. So if you can kind of twist your mind a little bit and think that you're thinking mostly about the future life or liberation or enlightenment, what's happening now doesn't matter as much, right? In terms of being affected by it. Doesn't mean it's pleasant. I'm not talking about that. But except for Rinpoche, how did he do that with having hundreds of mosquitoes on him and being happy? It wasn't, if he was focused on the happiness for the moment, he couldn't do that, right? Because I'm sure it itched and it was painful, it was uncomfortable. And if he was thinking just for the immediate future, he wouldn't have done it either. Because obviously in the next day or days, it's going to be, maybe you would think be swollen or that kind of a thing. And yet he could do that. And I may assume by being around him that his state of mind of happiness didn't waver at all. He never left. He was still happy. Which now if we define what means happy, that's a different story. Okay, peaceful, content, not agitated, not grasping, not hoping, not wishing. not striving for something temporary. If you remove all those, the mind is peaceful. Okay. Okay, some people know this slide. This is one of my favorites. That's why I keep putting it in there. So Rinpoche said to me once, he said, if you're just helping people feel better, because I'm a psychotherapist. He says, if you're just helping people feel better, there's really no benefit. Wow. Or he said, there's not much benefit. Now, of course, he was talking to me personally, and he was talking to me about, the work I was doing with clients. So if you just help your clients just feel better, of course, we have to help people feel better when they're when they're really feeling bad. Of course, sometimes we have to give a hug, and we have to give warmth, and we have to give affection. We have to give, we have to practice empathy. It's like it's just selfish not to do those things. But it's to do them without the intention that's their final help. You understand? So of course, if what we can do in the person's capacity is just to give some kind words, and that's the most you can do, you give kind words. But what's your intention is different. See, this is what's different. Okay? The intention is you're holding the view of that person as being able to become completely liberated. And not that they're some pathetic, suffering, confused person. That view of another person is never helpful. Or they're sick, right? It's very hard not to do that. We do that, the judgments, right? And I don't know, maybe you don't do it. I do it all the time. Okay? I do it all the time. I go into a restaurant and I'm going to ask people. So when you go into a restaurant, how many do some of you does anyone have that idea when you walk through the restaurant, like you're walking through it and you sit down and you notice a few people, do you have sometimes just these automatic judgments come up? Like, yeah?
Yeah, that's something that I've been working on for a while. I'm a retired police officer,
Oh,
and
yeah, right. Profiling.
and yes, profiling is real.
Yeah.
In the aspect of where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
If you see somebody carrying these big bags of money,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of, that's a clue, and that's, a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
So, that would be the first, judgment. I think a crime is,
See
looks
that,
like a bank robber,
right. I don't think there's when I was when I was an intern and getting my hours, and I was supervised by this one therapist, and I used her office, and next to the light switch and the door as you left, it said, judgment hurts the universe. And I really wanted to take that thing down, that little sign, because first of all, the universe is not a sentient being, so you can't really hurt the universe. But the other thing is, if you don't judge, right, then you're just going to walk into walls and walk into, chairs. And of course you're going to judge, and you're going to bump into. So part of there's five things that are constantly functioning in our mind for us to survive. Constantly, even when we die. And one of them is discrimination or discernment. So discernment and judgment I was using a little bit differently. Sometimes discernment, you could say, and judgment are the same, right? You judge whether that's blue or it's red. You judge whether it's hot or it's cold. But in this sense, the judgment is a little different that I was using. I think that I was using a little bit differently, which is making a conclusion about someone that's just based upon the data you're receiving through your senses. like a conclusion about their personhood, right? He must be really lazy because he didn't get up, he didn't open the door for me when I was, standing there, right? That kind of thing. That's judgment. We don't know why he didn't open the door, but we, depending on, some of us don't do that very much. Someone like me, I do it all the time. So that's based on ignorance. Okay. That's based on judgment or preconception and not being so when we become more mindful and aware of the function of the mind, then we do that less and less, right? Because it's your projection. Okay. If we didn't project all the time, then we wouldn't have two political parties, would we? You wonder how the people following one candidate can be voting for that guy or girl, woman, right? It's because we have judgment based on the past. Okay, let's gonna try this again.
So the question is how do we protect ourselves in our environment
Mm-hmm.
in a loving, kind way? Yeah,
How do we
that's a
protect
question,
ourselves?
Well,
You know the answer to it. I mean, like I just think of that image of Rinpoche. How did he protect himself from those mosquitoes? It wasn't through the mosquito net. We're not there, by the way. We have to use the net. Okay, don't get me wrong. We're talking in a very idealistic way, but it's important because the idealistic way is helping us know what we're capable of, right? And so it all starts with protecting the mind and developing the mind, doesn't it? And the development of the mind has many, 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 many levels. It's a layered, it's a process. Okay. So some of us, let's get sort of a little more simple here. For some of us, we have to just protect our mind. Do you know what I mean by that? For some of us, it means don't hang around with people who are bad. Don't hang around people who drink and use drugs. Don't, shout at drivers for going slow. You put on these rules. That is okay. That's good because the opposite it creates more problems for ourselves and for others, right? So the first thing, as the Holy Dalai Lama says, if you can't help, at least don't harm. Okay? If you can't help, at least don't harm. And even that's very hard to do. Very, very hard to do because as soon as someone insults you, what do you do back? As soon as they question your abilities, like you don't really know how to do that, do you? Here, let me help you with that. Right? So it's not about at our level, and what we're doing, we're trying to get deeper into it. It's not that so it's this level, someone says that to you, then at this level of practice, it's merely not responding, right? Or not responding aggressively or defensively. Okay. That's kind of the basic level of practice. And that's even covered in the Buddhist path in terms of the fundamentalist path or the Hinayana path. Lots of rules, lots of protection. If you're trying to stop drinking, don't go in a bar. That kind of stuff. Okay? Don't, it's like the 10 non-virtues. Don't kill. Just start with don't killing. Then also don't steal. Don't engage in sexual misconduct, like hurting other people through the sexual act. Okay. Don't lie. Okay. Don't use harsh words, swearing at people and yourself. Okay. Don't gossip. which means don't talk just meaningless talk about people and split people, and don't divide people through your speech, which we do all the time. Not we, I shouldn't say that we all do that. Some people do it more, because we're trying to get someone's affection, and then their affection is being given to someone else, and then we'll say something disparaging about the other person, and it can be very light, right? And then then the three of the mind is not longing for other people's things, their status, their possessions, their position, their job. Okay, then watching your level of greed. Okay. Yeah, and then the last one is developing, well, the virtue is developing right views. The non-virtue is developing wrong views. And if you want to know what wrong views are, these are easy to see, because they always sort of rub you the wrong way when you hear people espousing them. Not always, but they can be subtle too. But wrong views about, anyway, in the political system, you hear these wrong views all the time. Okay? So we start with that. And why do we do those? Now, that's really important. Okay, I'm going to go on. Why follow those ethics? Because we should. It's like commandments. We should. Why not kill, steal, sexual misconduct?
Because they disturb our mind.
Because they disturb our minds. So, gossiping, which seems light, disturbs the mind. If you're when we develop through our meditation and through other practices, the quality, we have experiences, don't we, of certain level of mind, even walking in nature, maybe we go for a walk, and or being with a person we really care about, and it develops, you experience a more content, peaceful state of mind, don't we? Especially when we're with people we feel fond of, because we are relationship people, we're social beings, and the power of another person is very powerful on us. That's why when you're with someone who has a spiritual development and they don't say much, even, you leave and go, wow, what was that? When you're with Rinpoche or Lama Yeshe or His Holiness or these other great teachers, it's not really what they say, it's their being. And sadly, we don't have enough of them in the world. So, like Denise said, those beings, if you check, they have an ethical lifestyle. Not because you shouldn't do those things. This is not about Catholicism or Judaism or any of the ones that tell us how you have to be. I believe those probably all started from the exact same place of Buddhism. And I think they're all the same. It's just that sometimes people misconstrue them and turn them into, rules and regulations. That's Dharma politics, so to speak. Okay. It's like I spend a lot of time in Nepal, and when I'm there, I'm in the monastery there, and it's really amazing to me. I don't know what to do about it, actually. But the people in the monastery, and I don't want to romanticize or glorify it. So don't take it that way. But I will tell you, when you're in the monastery, there is a spirit of kindness, and it's completely uncontrived. It's not because we should be kind. I mean, there might be that. I don't know. I don't see it there, but I'm sure that can be there. It's not that. In fact, I was in I was at a conference there when was that? maybe it was September, I can't remember. And it was the first time, this was a training for in the foundation training in the organization. And it's about a 3 or 4 day conference. And for the first time, I was really hoping that we could have some of the senior Tibetan monks and nuns come to this conference. Now, it's usually taught to Westerners around the centers in the world. It's a foundation training seminar. And so one of the parts of the workshop was about burnout, right? How to prevent burnout. Because when you're working in a center, this is often one of the chief complaints is burnout. It's, and I just watched my friends, my Tibetan, both the monks and nuns. These are senior teachers. I mean, well, they weren't young. I mean, they were not old, but I mean, they were advanced in their study. And I knew they would not get this. I just knew. And they have all these things on the slide about, well, tell people what you're feeling and, make sure you take a break and, go, don't work, too many hours and don't go over, don't go past your threshold. So then you're resentful and all these things. And I just look at the monks and nuns looking up at the screen, because it was a PowerPoint thing and looking at it. And I know they understood the language. Don't get me wrong. And they probably even understood. So then they had then there was discussion, amongst the whole group. There's about 40 people there. And there's 40 people and people raise, what do you do about it? What do you do like that? And all the Tibetans are being, not saying anything, right? So then when the people stopped talking, giving their suggestions and their feedback and their experiences, I had to ask to the audience, I asked the monks and nuns, I said, so my experience working with you is you don't have burnout. And I will tell you, they work unbelievable hours. They their whole life, even the young ones, they get up at 5 or 6 and they study till 10. And they don't stop. They have a lunch break, of course. And when you see them work, when they have these festivals that go on at the monastery or these courses and stuff, they just don't stop. They're just running around. And it's like, and so I asked them, I said, do you understand what they're talking about here? And they said, I think so. I said, well, you don't have this, do you? And they said, no, we really don't. And I said, why? What is fundamental preventing burnout? And they thought about it and they all agreed it was compassion. And compassion, they said, but this isn't a compassion like sometimes we see about being nice, or I should be compassion. I'm practicing compassion today. So this angry customer here, I'm gonna be compassionate, I'm gonna, you kind of have your fists, underneath the table and tightening up, or your jaws, but you're not gonna say anything. I'm gonna be compassionate. I'm gonna listen to him. That's good, by the way. But that's not, they don't try to have it. And I said to them, well, why? And they said, well, we think it's just built in our culture. And I know that's built in a lot of cultures. It's not just their culture. It's just when I'm like in Nepal, not monastic or anything, a lot of them not maybe Buddhist, just the people, just commonly, they just have this natural sense that they'll notice if you're hungry or need a cup of tea, they'll give you a cup of tea, even if they don't have much money or don't have a lot of tea or don't have a lot. It's just the culture, it's a mindset. And unfortunately here, and I'm generalizing, our mindset is evolving into this thing that it's all based on external manipulation. If we manipulate the environment enough, we'll be happy. Right? If we manipulate the environment enough, we're materialists in philosophy. Okay. No, I know I'm not, like if I go and my favorite tea is not, forgot to replenish it. It's really important to look at my mind. I think when I was younger, I'd like why didn't you get the tea? You just were at the market yesterday. Why didn't you, right? Right? And it's like, well, now what am I going to drink? Okay, I'm just going to I'll go down to the store and get some. But there's all these other teas up there, by the way. It's not like there's no tea. But that's part of what I learned living in that culture. It's very important, right? It's very helpful. These other cultures help us, just kind of embarrassing where we're going in this Western modern culture. And we're not all, I'm generalizing, of course. I don't think any of you are subscribing to that approach to life, but we're living in it, right? That's where we're living. And that's who we're dealing with. And then compassion's not so hard, because it's very sad. Because people don't know what is the cause of happiness. The cause of happiness is not going down to the supermarket and getting new tea, another box of tea. The cause of happiness is having my mind not move because there isn't the tea that I want. It's so simple. It's just really simple. That is Buddhist practice. That is our practice. The practice is not having the mind with its neurotic, knee-jerk reactions. That's all. That is all. And now, how do we not have those knee-jerk reactions? Is by developing a philosophy. And at first we start like not getting angry about the tea not being there. But then that's because our mind has become more subtle, right? We notice it. The other people don't even notice. It's just like, oh, why didn't you get the tea? You're the problems, right? Isn't that what people say? You're the problem because your memory is terrible these days. And why? Because you're working too much. See? That is opposite of what we're trying to develop here. Why are we trying to develop it? Because we want to be happy. That's all. We can't buy enough tea to keep us happy. Okay? So and I want to share a slide with you just a second. I'm so glad this is working. It is working, right? Okay.
Yes, it's definitely working.
Okay. So I want to just, this is where I'm kind of pontificating about. Do I sound like a evangelist? I hope not. Jessica, do I sound like a evangelist? She would tell me if I was. Am I? No? Okay. So this is the distinction, okay? This is the shift we will make. I don't care if you call it Buddhist, by the way. I don't care. There's a beautiful book by Lama Yeshe called Silent Mind, Holy Mind that I've been reading. And it's his teachings on Christmas. And I had the great fortune of attending those teachings in Nepal in I think 19. Well, he gave him a few times. Yeah, actually, he would insist we celebrate Christmas in the monastery. Can you believe this? He was such a revolutionary. Christmas in the Buddhist monastery in the mid-70s to the late 80s. Well, he passed away in 1984. Can you believe that? I mean, that takes courage. Why? Because he saw Jesus as another holy being. Doesn't matter you label him Buddhist or Christian or Muslim. Especially for Lama, he didn't care. And I miss that Lama's influence isn't here, because I know that these other high Lamas mean the same thing, but they don't articulate it as radically as Lama Yeshe did. So in Buddhism, in Tibetan, the word for Buddhist is Nangpa. Nang means inside or inner, and Pa means a person or a being. So Buddhists, instead of, and I often say, why do we use the word Buddhist? It's Sanskrit. Why are we using a Sanskrit word in English? Well, that happens a lot with English, right? We absorb a lot of language. But, if we were going to be really, really religious about this, we should call each other, oh, I'm an inner being. Oh, I'm a Christian. Oh, okay. What religion are you? Oh, I'm an inner being, a Buddhist. Yeah. What kind of, yeah, I'm an inner being. Okay. So what the shift is for a spiritual person, and this is not all inclusive, right? It's just my way of looking at it, is that you view the world from internally, not looking outwardly. Okay. So again, about the climate change and the meteor. Of course, the meteor hit. That's data. You can't dismiss that. But are you looking at the meteor and the destruction of the city purely from an outer point of view, or are you an inner being who has an appreciation that there's a whole explanation going on internally as well? It's not denying the external. That would be an extreme. If you're only internal, that would be an extreme. But most people are only external. That's an extreme. So, when they talk about Buddhism being the middle way, this is one articulation of the middle way. You understand the interaction and the interplay between the inner and the outer. You understand? Okay? So it's not just the outer. And no matter how much we understand the outer, it's never going to be enough, and it's never going to make us happy. It's never going to make us content. It's never going to answer our questions. It's going to go on and on forever. But if we come from an inner locus, an inner focus, then there is an end to all that. There is an end. There is an end to confusion. When we look at someone who's ill or gets cancer, and we're trying to figure out, why did he get cancer? What are we going to do? And then eventually you can't figure it. It drives you nuts because you can't figure it out. That's because there's no answer ultimately externally. You are not going to figure it out. Okay? Some things you're not going to figure out externally. It has to be an interdependence or an interconnection with the inner experience. Now, why? And this is, sorry to jump. And then I won't dwell on this. I'll just put this out there. When we talk about problems being constructed, so an entire universe is constructed. It doesn't exist the way it appears, by the way. When I look at you and you look at me and you hear my voice and all this, none of that exists the way you're perceiving it. Isn't that weird? And yet, every instant we believe it is. And we act as if it is. So if there's a hologram person or some AI or hologram that walks in your door and you don't know it's a hologram, you're going to interact with it as if it's really out there, right? As soon as you know it's a hologram, your whole relationship with that entity changes. When Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe and His Holiness Dalai Lama, when they see the world, they see it like a hologram. Not the same. I'm not trying to say, I'm using that as a metaphor. In other metaphors, they see it like a dream. Because what we see isn't the way it exists. And the definition of of reality, okay? One definition of reality is the way that something appears to you or to us is the way it exists. And in our world, everything that appears to us does not exist that way. That's messed up. That's really messed up. Don't you think? That means we're constantly relating with everything as if it were real in the way it appears to us, but it's not there like that. It is there. There's something there. Okay? There's a wall and there's a room and there's a person walking by and there's people on the screen, but they're not there. It's not there. Nothing's there the way we're perceiving it. So that perception of things as being different than they are is the human condition and that's the problem. Okay, not the meteor hitting the city, which we don't want to happen, by the way. It's not the cancer, but yes, cancer sucks. It's suffering. It's suffering. Okay. So problems then are viewed in the context of starting from the inside out. And the fundamental approach is to know thyself. Okay. Okay. What do we got? About 7 minutes or something? Do you want to talk? Or do you want to go a little bit more?
We can, whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, we'll just yeah, this is a big
Good.
point. So yeah, okay. Why don't we do you want to people, let me go off slide share. And see, do people have something they would like to ask? Or, I see Jai in South Australia. You didn't come on camera. Are you sleeping down there? Wait, it must be about, hang on, don't tell me.
No. It's almost 2 o'clock down here. We're on this weird half-hour story.
I was
And
gonna say it was 4 o'clock. Are you in South Australia?
I'm
You're
in
in
South
South
Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in Adelaide, or where are you at?
I'm about 50 miles north of Adelaide, in the middle of nowhere, really.
Uh-huh.
And the NBN, or the Wi-Fi is not great.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I can't.
You could, but anyone
Well,
did anyone have anything to ask? Jai, did you want to say something? Or?
no, it's all headed in the right direction for me. I agree with the topics that other folks identified they were interested in, the emptiness particularly.
Okay.
The other one, of course, and you're touching on that, is the bodhisattva.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's all good. I will volunteer that when I read whatever Lama Yeshe said, and I probably could have met him somehow, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
paths didn't cross. I'm old enough.
Yes, and he was in Bendigo and those places. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Anyway, it's like I always, when I hear his stuff, I think, oh yeah, that's my guy. I can really grok him. I get what he's saying really well. So yeah, I agree with you. He's got an unusual way of wording things that is very accessible to Westerners.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it, but he did. Well, I know how he did it, but
Yeah.
thank you. Sheil?
Hello. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Like you mentioned that I think it was Lama Yishi and Lama Zopa and perhaps Dalai Lama, they see everything as a hologram. And
Like a
so
hologram. Like a
like
hologram.
like a hologram. So there was like a Rinpoche I was listening to, and he used an analogy of like we think of ourselves as like the rainbow, like it's there, but it's not really there.
Mhm.
So if that's how they perceive things and our end goal is to perceive things like that, how does that happen that we see, like I see you as a hologram, or I see my lamps as a
I
hologram?
mean, how do you get there, or why do you
Yeah,
say it's
like
not like that?
like how do we see that? Like if I saw you as a hologram, um like would that make me be crazy in like in like living in like if I saw everybody as a hologram, or I saw every experience
Like a hologram.
like the hologram, like if I saw every experience that came my way like the hologram, whether in my mind something really, something
Yeah.
happened that wasn't favorable to me, but I saw it as a hologram, like I suppose
When
like
you're dreaming at night, do you go crazy?
no, because I'm not interacting with real life people.
It's the same thing. It's very similar. So it doesn't mean you go crazy. So when we see reality, then it appears to us like it does in a dream. Okay, it's not the same, but like that. And it doesn't mean it. That's why the hologram one is good, but we got to be careful too. So when Lama Zopa Rinpoche sees people, sees everything, he sees it like a dream for him. He also sees what you're seeing, that you're seeing things as real, solid, concrete, wrongly. So he's not like just living in this dream of denial. He knows what your experience is. And when we start talking about the bodhisattva, this is what part of the bodhisattva's reality. Okay. And so when that bodhisattva sees you, he or she sees you in reality. And that reality is going to appear to her similar to how she would experience a person in a dream. Okay. But she will know that when you're sad or when you're suffering, this is not some denial like, oh, she's just a dream, she's not suffering. No, because you believe what you believe. Okay. And that bodhisattva, will have great compassion for you because it's so sad that what you're suffering over doesn't exist that way. And in fact, I don't know how they don't just cry all the time, honestly.
I think when these words are used, it really confuses me. Like I read it all the time and I hear it all the time from teachers. Like we don't see reality as it really is. What does that mean? Does that mean we don't see things that it's a coming together and a falling apart? It's a coming
Right.
together.
Yes, that's part of it. Yes.
And
Yes.
because we
If your
don't.
mind, when the mind slows down and not distracted and has the right information, it sees that. It sees the atoms arising and falling away. It sees the person's mind as a stream of consciousness. That's why it's reality. That's why I talk about the Four Noble Truths. They're truths. Because that's how someone who sees reality sees those things. Like we meditate on the truth of suffering, for example, but we don't really meditate on it. We don't really know what that means until we have insight into emptiness. Not enlightenment, just an insight into emptiness. When a person has that insight in emptiness, they go, wow, everything's in the nature of suffering. Wow, this is messed up. And they're like, almost have like a heart attack because the whole earth turns upside down. Now they've prepared for it. Don't get me wrong. So, if it just happened, you'd probably go crazy. Maybe certain schizophrenics or people who maybe they do see some glimpses of reality, but they don't have what we call the positive potential, the power to deal with it. They don't have the equipment. It blows their fuses. Seriously, it's very similar. So we don't never push our practice. Never push. I gotta see emptiness. I gotta see like that. Doesn't work that way. Takes a lot more conditions than just wanting it. Yeah. So, yeah. Anything else? Because we're all reaching the end, but yeah. Yep.
So I want to go simple.
Okay.
With
me?
Wrong view.
Huh?
I get wrong view.
Yeah.
I get that when chocolate milk gets spilled in this house, it gets spilled on electronics, on the floor, you name it, it goes everywhere. I know that, hey, no big deal. We clean it up. That's all right. I align my mind. I don't get angry. I can, I'm having good thoughts about chocolate milk being spilled. I think where I run into trouble with wrong view is going back to that whole profiling where, and I'm using that word very broad.
Sure.
When I see somebody on the street or on the internet or I read something, and my mind instantly goes to, oh, they must align with political party A. They must align with political party B, or maybe they drive A, and then insert whatever vehicle that you find distasteful.
It's simple. So it's simple. But I think I know what you're getting at. So it's
Yeah.
simple. So it's not what we're seeing like that, like a person's political view, or they look like an angry person, or it's not that. I mean, when we go very, very deep, so go to the deepest level, it's just, I mean, what we're arguing against is, I mean, because otherwise you're going to walk into a group of, hoodlums and get beat up or killed or whatever, in a gang, so that's just dumb, right? But what we're talking about here is not that. It's how that's seeing that person as really existing that way, that they are their view. They are their view. And that's because of ignorance. We always see things as truly existing the way they appear. So you can notice that someone's violent, right? Can you imagine noticing that someone's violent, but also noticing that that's not their true existence? Because when we see someone violent and we don't like that person, for whatever reason, we see them as existing really that way. Same thing with attraction. If I'm really attracted to somebody, or really, then the same thing. So that person might have those qualities, but they're not inherently existent because not everyone sees those qualities in that person, right? If that person really had all those great qualities, then everyone would see them. So it's only we see those great qualities or those negative qualities as inherently or truly existing the way they appear. Solid, we say self-existent, right? So the job is not to see, to be kind of in la la land and not see those, walking into a whole, there's a bed of snakes or something. That's not what we're talking about. It's how we see the snakes and how we see the bad people and how we see the beautiful people. And we believe, see, that's the thing, we believe our judgment. That's maybe the best way to think of it. We believe that judgment. It's not that the judgment, it doesn't exist. It's just that we believe it. Okay. So anything else?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And we could talk about more next week. Sure we will. Anything else really quickly? Okay. Okay. So, we'll see you next week. And you can think about for a moment, just to, sometimes typically we have some sort of dedication, mental dedication. And you just think rather than just all these imprints and this noise that I've been giving you, these images, usually we just experience something and then it's gone. So what you can do is you just think in your mind, well, like putting something in the bank for your children's education. Then you put all this hour and a half of experience with all these imprints, and you just put it in the bank for developing your own mind into a peaceful, fulfilled state of mind, actualizing your potential. Okay, think like that, and that in that process you're going to be more benefit to others. So just reflect on that for a moment. So we can achieve the highest potential of our mind for the welfare of others too. Thank you very, very, very much. I really had a good time. Please come back because I don't like it when I have to talk to myself. Okay? Okay. Good night. Good day.